There are a number of New Zealand standards or agreed specifications for assessing and measuring sound in the environment. NZS 6808-2010 is the New Zealand standard that deals specifically with the sound from wind turbines. This short film explains what sound can be heard from a wind turbine, the noise limits recommended by the standard, how this edition of the standard was developed, and how it will be used. Sounds from wind farms have three sources. Sound is created by the blades as they rotate. This is sometimes described as a swishing or whooshing sound. Mechanical sounds come from the generator or gearbox, which is housed in the nacelle.
Sound also comes from the transformer, which sits inside the base of the tower or next to it. These types of sound are covered by the standard and can be measured accurately with sound level meters.
What sounds you hear and how loud you perceive them to be depends on many factors, including the distance between you and the turbine, the wind's speed and direction, and other local sources of sound. For example, when there is no wind, wind turbines don't operate and create no sound. When the wind increases, the wind turbines will begin to generate electricity. The sound becomes louder until they reach their maximum generation.
At the same time, other sound in the environment, or background sound, becomes louder. As the wind interacts with trees, buildings and other structures, it may become louder than the turbines. Other local sources of sound, such as cars or lawnmowers, may at times be louder than the sound from the wind farm. The standard takes into account these unique characteristics of sound from the wind turbines, as well as the fact that the wind can affect microphones used to measure sound.
The Wind Farm Noise Standard recommends that, in most cases, the sound from wind farms outside noise-sensitive locations, such as homes or schools, should not exceed the level of 40 decibels or 5 decibels above background sound, whichever is the greater. This limit is relative to background sound, as sometimes the background sound will be louder than 40 decibels. Limiting the wind farm sound to 40 decibels when the background sound is louder provides no benefit to the residents. And if the background noise is as loud or louder than the wind farm sound cannot be monitored properly. The standard introduces a provision that allows councils to set a lower, more stringent limit for particularly quiet locations. It recommends that when particular conditions were met, the sound from wind farms during the evening or night time should not exceed levels of 35 decibels or the background sound levels by more than 5 decibels, whichever is the greater. If the limits recommended by the standards are properly applied, people living near the wind farm may hear the wind farm but only at a reasonable level. 40 decibels is typical for a quiet residential area with only light traffic and natural sounds such as wind through trees. In contrast, sound levels alongside an urban road would be around 60 to 70 decibels during the day and about 50 to 60 decibels at night. To determine how a recommended limit applies to a proposed wind farm, developers will measure background sound levels at representative locations around the wind farm and also the wind speeds at the wind farm. From this, they can determine the relationship between background sounds and wind speeds. This information is used to specify acceptable sound levels from wind farms at locations around the wind farm. Developers will then ensure that the wind farm is designed and operated in a way that complies with these limitations.
This effects-based approach is consistent with the requirements of the Resource Management Act. It prevents unreasonable noise while enabling the sustainable management of a natural resource. The standard also ensures that wind farm sound is limited in a way that is consistent with how sound from other sources is limited.
Standards New Zealand is the organisation responsible for the development of New Zealand standards.
Each standard is developed by a committee whose members have relevant expertise. The 2010 edition of the Wind Farm Noise Standard was developed by representatives of local authority and community interests, engineering and scientific experts in acoustics, practitioners in planning, resource management and environmental health, and wind farm developers. Its development was co-funded by the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority and the New Zealand Wind Energy Association.
The original standard was published in 1998. The committee found that the basic methodology was robust, but that a number of technical changes were needed to bring it into line with other New Zealand and international standards, and also the good practice that had emerged since 1998. We released a draft for public comment in February 2009 and received over 600 submissions. Each comment was reviewed by the committee until we reached a final consensus on the standard. One of the key changes in the new version of the standard is that councils will be able to set more stringent noise limits on wind farms that affect particularly quiet areas. The new standard also provides better protection for communities by explicitly addressing several issues such as cumulative effects from multiple wind farms or wind farms developed in stages, forewarning prospective residents that an area is already affected or is permitted to be affected by wind farm sound, and audible characteristics of wind farm sound, such as tones and modulation. The committee considered a wide range of internationally published material about the effects of wind farm sound on people's health, including alleged effects of low-frequency sound and vibration. We found that based on the evidence available, the recommendations in the standard do provide appropriate protection against adverse health effects. The World Health Organization recommends that noise should be limited to 30 decibels inside a bedroom to prevent sleep disturbance. As sound attenuates, or becomes quieter, as it travels through walls and windows, the standard's limit of 40 decibels outside a home is consistent with this World Health Organization recommendation. Wind turbines are not silent. However, application of the standard should ensure that the level of their sound is not out of place with other sounds in the environment.
The recommendations in the standard are not law, but it will be used by wind farm developers, acoustic specialists, council staff and commissioners to set resource consent conditions and determine the wind farm's compliance with these conditions. The standard has been specifically written with this application in mind, and it includes model consent conditions to ensure correct implementation. These conditions provide the council with practical enforcement measures. Any consent conditions that are based on the standard will be enforceable by councils.
If you have questions about noise from a proposed wind farm, the project's developer will be able to answer them. Copies of New Zealand Standard 6808 can be purchased from Standards New Zealand, and more information about wind energy and renewable energy can be obtained from the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority and the New Zealand Wind Energy Association.